Do you live with your parents? Are you artistic and passionate, but every time you try to engage with your passion, there's this voice in your head that screams it's not good enough? You constantly feel rushed and like you're wasting time, and everything that you do feels like you're taking one step forward and two steps back. This is a super common narrative that I see with clients that I work with. And today we're going to talk about the journey that a client, let's call this hypothetical client Luna, the journey that Luna takes through the coaching process. My name is Sean. I'm a mental health coach. I see 40 plus clients a week. I have a 98% satisfaction score from over 1,500 ratings. And there are three parts to my coaching process. Part one is emotional empowerment. Part two is narrative navigation. And part three is Dharma Design. And I'll explain what each of those mean as we go through. So we're going to talk about how Luna goes through each of those phases of coaching. And we're going to start with emotional empowerment. So let's dive in. So we start by exploring why Luna feels this way. This is the first step in the process, is to give emotions room to breathe. So often we try to shove our emotions down and we don't listen to them. But emotions are constantly sending us signals. And when we start listening to those, it allows us to get an idea of what is going on. So then we can actually make some sort of difference or change. Trying to make change without knowing what is going on is sort of like trying to walk when both of your legs are completely numb. You're just going to stumble and fall all over the place. So, as we started to explore why Luna felt this way, what we started to discover is that her parents were constantly criticizing her. So nothing was ever good enough for them. She could come to them with a 99% on a test, and they would ask about why she got the 1% wrong. And so it made her feel like she wasn't good enough, and anything that she tried wasn't good enough. Because all of a sudden, it wasn't like, perfection was a big accomplishment. Perfection was just what was expected. And so she had this impossible bar. Either she failed or she did what was expected of her. And on top of that, her parents constantly held things over her head. So in addition to, pointing out every mistake that she made, they would also constantly talk about how they had sacrificed everything for her, they had done so much for her, and rub that in, which made her feel like she was in debt, like she needed to work to prove to her parents that their sacrifice was worth it. And in doing so, it resulted in this paralysis because Luna was absolutely crushed by this feeling of debt that she was saddled with. She felt like she constantly needed to rush and like she was wasting time because she had all of this debt on her back that she felt like she desperately had to pay off. So when we first started working together, Luna's idea of how to pay off this metaphorical debt was in the fastest, most efficient way possible. So I'll get a high-paying job and I'll be successful, and that will make all of my parents' sacrifices and everything worth it. And so she went down this path of trying to train for the skills to get a high-paying job. The problem with this is that the high-paying job that she was training for was something that she hated. She wasn't passionate about it at all. And so every day felt like rubbing her forehead against a cheese grater. And then it got even worse because even though she managed to push herself through that training process, through acquiring those skills, then when she actually started going and trying to hunt for jobs, to apply for those high-paying jobs, she didn't want to. Like, she couldn't imagine herself working a job that she hated so much. She could barely stand learning the skills. How was she going to do this for 8 hours a day for the foreseeable future? And then there was this double whammy because it's not like while she wasn't looking for jobs, she could just rest and relax, because anytime she tried to do something like her art that she was passionate about, then the voice in her head would say, "What are you doing? You should be applying for jobs," and riddle her with guilt. And so it was this horrible catch-22 trap that she was stuck in. And there was a period there of real despair because of that trap, that Luna didn't feel like she could do anything. She would just lay in bed and rot because she felt such despair that she had worked so hard to try to do this thing and wasted so much time trying to do this thing. And now she couldn't move forward with it. Now comes the second step in the coaching process, which is narrative navigation. Now that we have an understanding of what narratives Luna's emotions had written for her, we needed to help her to rewrite them in a way that served her. And so we started with looking at Luna's debt that she felt to her parents. And we helped her to accept that that debt is not her responsibility. Now, at first, when we talked about this, there was this big uprising from that voice in her head. Let's call that voice Shadow Luna. Shadow Luna would pop up and go, "What are you talking about? Of course it's my responsibility." And so Luna couldn't just accept it right away. And the way that we overcame that was by helping Luna to understand that Shadow Luna was not actually an enemy, wasn't actually someone to fight against. Shadow Luna was actually trying to help her. She was trying to help her be a good girl because she was terrified that if she didn't do this, then she would be a bad daughter. And why wouldn't she think that? That is the narrative that her parents had told her her entire life. And so by creating an alliance between Luna and Shadow Luna, where they understood that they were actually on the same side and trying to accomplish the same things, it helped them to start to work together to solve the problem rather than fight against one another. One of the things that really helped Luna to start to shift her perspective were analogies. And I use a lot of analogies in my work. The way that I understand that analogies help is that we all have had the experience where we can give great advice to a friend, but we can't take it ourselves. And so what analogies do is that they externalize the problem, right? So if you have a problem and I give you an analogy of something that you already understand that is similar to your situation, it helps to create that understanding for yourself. Here's an example of an analogy that I might use with Luna. Imagine that a credit card company sends you a whole bunch of expensive luxury items and then demands that you pay them back with interest. It would be absurd because you never asked for any of that stuff in the first place. And so as we started to remind Luna of this over and over and over again, what started to happen is that the weight of that debt started to lessen. She no longer felt so responsible for it because she was able to see the absurdity of the ask from that external situation. And so as she was able to see that paying off this debt was not her responsibility, she started to turn back toward her art and passions. Now, at first, it was really difficult because she was still trying to do things in the way that she always had. But the way that she always had was built from this place of, it's not good enough, I need to rush, I need to pay off this debt. And so it wasn't intuitive for her, it was just the way that she thought she was supposed to do things. But as we started to explore and celebrate the way that Luna naturally did things, she started to discover processes that were more intuitive to her. And it was fascinating to witness because what would happen is that as she would start to do things in a way that actually worked better for her, and I would sort of notice that and point that out and say, hey, it sounds like this way actually works way better for you. There would be this recognition that so many successful memories that Luna had experienced all coincided with this particular way of working. And so then as we started to celebrate that, as we started to say, hey, look, we're finding this way that actually works intuitively for you, there was this need for almost permission because it felt bad and wrong to do things in this way. It was not the way that she had been taught to do it. And so as we reassured her and said, hey, it's okay, you can do it this way actually works better for you. You actually make more progress when you do it this way. More and more permission started to be granted internally, and she was able to actually work in the way that was the most intuitive for her. And for the first time in a very long time, Luna was able to actually have fun engaging in her art again, which just makes me emotional talking about it. Luna had always hated working jobs, but for the first time, she felt like this was something that she could do for the rest of her life. Always before, when she would come home, she would feel miserable and exhausted. There was no space for anything else. But now when she came home, she still felt tired physically, but there was mental space to do things that she enjoyed, like going on dates with her boyfriend. And every day when she would get up, she was excited to start her work. This is Dharma Design, the process of intentionally crafting a life that is fulfilling for you. Luna had always had a hard time speaking confidently about herself, but when she talked about her passion and her art, it was like a completely different person. She was confident. She knew that her work was going to knock the socks off the industry. She knew her art was special, and she was able to bring it to life because she was no longer compromising and just trying to get it done as quickly as possible to pay off her debt. She wasn't doing it out of obligation. She was doing it because it lit her spark. When I see this process, I get absolutely giddy. Nothing makes my heart swell more than when people start to align with what they love and work in ways that are intuitive for them. Seeing their shame melt away and the way that they step into themselves gives me goosebumps even talking about it right now. So if you have resonated with Luna's journey and you would like help shedding your own shame and finding ways to work intuitively for yourself, let's have a free 50-minute session where I'll offer any help that I can. I'll leave a link down in the description. And if you want some more tactical tips on how to land a great job and boost your salary, this video walks through how I do that with my clients. Check it out. I hope this was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye! And what? Okay, I'll get it.